I'm here today with Neiman. He sent me a message a couple of days ago about a text he wrote about DAOs. And I thought, what the hell is that? And he told me, and it's got something to do with blockchain. And I've always been a bit suspicious when I heard about blockchain. But Neiman told me about it, so I thought it must be all right. So I thought, why not have you explain me the concept of blockchain and this DAO stuff? So that's what we're going to do today. So let's first start off by introducing you. Who are you? I already know you, but you'll have to tell the listeners.
Yeah, you know me. I'm not sure exactly how much you know of me, but I am Neiman, which is obviously the nickname. I am from Israel originally. I have a PhD in mathematics from Berlin, from Fire University, and I still live in Germany since a decade. My PhD is in partial differential equations, which is something that I haven't done from the moment that I finished the PhD.
That sounds very, very complex.
Yeah, it is. I wasn't very great at it, but so the PhD was difficult. But
will we have to talk about that today?
No.
Oh.
But I was always doing, I think that every Israeli mathematician does cryptography during his lifetime, because it's like before I moved to Germany, I just thought that all the math courses have so much cryptography. And then I found out that this is kind of an Israeli thing. So I was always doing cryptography, and I was always, growing up in underground internet cultures, and I was always into like peer-to-peer stuff and all this kind of stuff. So when I found out about Bitcoin and blockchain, which was relatively early on, before the hype, luckily, then I really got into it. And after the PhD, which is already in the last, it's more than 5 years, I've been doing open source projects around blockchain, consulting for blockchain, and this kind of stuff. And that's what I do now. So doing open source projects, trying to support myself with it.
Awesome. So let's start with a quick overview. We're talking about DAOs today and decentralized organizations. Is that correct?
Decentralized autonomous organization.
So decentralized what?
Decentralized autonomous organization.
Okay, so I think we're going to get to what that precisely means, but I always thought blockchain was kind of a money thing. So how can we create organizations with that?
Yeah, I actually wrote definition of blockchain for a German specification for the German Standard Institute, for the DIN, only writing this definition required a lot of research of what blockchain is, and eventually we came down to, I think, 3 options. One of them is that blockchain is just to become like a branch of IT, so that's obviously not what you mean. The other one with blockchain is a kind of database, so kind of distributed database. And the third one is that blockchain is a big description of a system which includes a distributed database and a peer-to-peer protocol and a lot of stuff. And all the 3 answers are correct, just depends from which point of view.
So some things I'm hearing there, it's distributed, so it's not running on a central server, which also is kind of this autonomous distributed thing we talked about before with DAOs. And then it's got something to do with computers, obviously, because I'm here, so it's got to be something to do with computers. And with cryptography, because you're a cryptographer.
Hobbyist cryptographer.
You are. I can say that even if you don't. So I'll just decide that. So what I've kind of understood is that blockchain is the sort of bookkeeping thing. Is that correct? So you can create entries, and you can store shared information in a way that all participants agree on.
So it is. I think this is like the most common use case of blockchain. If you take the last definition that I said, which is blockchain is kind of a big system with many participants and database and cryptography and protocol, which is how most people think about it, which is okay. That's the one that we should use. Then the most common use cases for bookkeeping, so Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies. But it's not the only one. It's really, I mean, it's not the only one. You can basically do every kind of database in this method. So not only for bookkeeping, also for voting. I don't know if voting is considered as bookkeeping, or in DAOs for management and organization, for lots of people doing like a management action together. So bookkeeping is the most common use case. I think that by now not the most interesting one, just because it was so much overused. So all the other use cases are slightly more interesting for me, subjectively.
So I mean, one thing I hear there is also that blockchain is a lot of things, and of course, in the last couple of years, when you've been around technology, blockchain is one of those topics that keeps popping up. So there's somebody has a problem, somebody else has a solution that involves blockchain, and that might be the reason, because it's such a versatile tool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the cause of this video, it's the best way to think about blockchain is for a collaborative database, distributed database. And the question is not really what blockchain does, but what doesn't happen in blockchain. And the most important thing for what doesn't happen in blockchain is that no one party or no one participant or a small amount of participants can really influence it. So it gives you kind of security. And in cases where you need this security, it's good to use it. On other cases where you have a trusted party, or where you are, don't know. So me and my neighbors are not going to use a blockchain because we trust each other in some sense. And if we don't, we are close enough to figure out other ways to solve the difficulty. It should also be used in ways which are really, it's quite slow and eating resources. It's not very efficient. So it should be used in care, really, when it's needed.
Okay, so blockchain is kind of a database you would use together with people you don't trust. If I started a database on my web server, I should probably trust it because I can just write into it. If I don't trust the people who want to be using my database, then maybe I could consider using blockchain with a lot of caveats.
This is super accurate. Yes, this is very
That's why
good.
I'm interviewing you to give accurate summaries.
Yeah.
So the most common use case, or the most common use today of blockchain, is Bitcoin. So,
it depends. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all right. You go. You're here to talk. I'm here to.
Don't tell it to. I mean, depends which community you ask. If you tell it to Ethereum people, they may not agree. But I think that yes, in general, it's most useful for financial services.
So, is there more Ethereum users than Bitcoin users?
Sorry.
It's. Am I audible?
Yeah. I just didn't.
Okay.
Catch
So just checking. I don't really trust my audio setup yet. It's all kind of cobbled together in the last 10 minutes. Neiman saw me doing.
It was very impressive thing to see.
So Ethereum is one other use case of Bitcoin. So there's these multiple blockchains which each kind of are doing their own thing. So why would I want to be using Ethereum or another blockchain over Bitcoin?
So it depends what you want to do. The very short history of blockchains, of course, Bitcoin was the first use case of it. So the word blockchain was invented by Satoshi. Actually, not in the Bitcoin white paper. It was written in a comment of the Bitcoin source code, and he wrote block space chain, which is quite cool. And then
in there, so I like it.
Yeah, it used to be like that. So this was the first one of basically like just a way to transfer some value between people in the internet. And what happens afterwards is that lots of projects raised with a similar idea to Bitcoin, but with different parameters. So changing the speed, changing the amount, the size, adjusting the amount of currency created and all this kind of stuff. And so for one reason to use like something which is not Bitcoin, but something else like Litecoin, if you want extra speed, you go for Litecoin. If you want something which is more private than Bitcoin, you can use Monero, for example, or Zcash. Ethereum was created so Ethereum took all those things that people did. People even did very early on, when Satoshi was still involved, there was even non-financial use cases of blockchain, like Namecoin was a way to create DNS using blockchain. I think it was the first.
So it's kind of a name resolution thing where you could like plug in a name on the internet, like Wikipedia.org, and have that resolved to a name, but like not with a central authority, but with a distributed bookkeeping. So everybody would agree that person has the right to the domain, and that's harder to censor, for instance, because there's no central authority that can decide, hey, the US government called me and said, reroute this domain for these specific people.
Exactly. So there was other non-financial use cases. There were people who tried to do kind of exchanges with this technology, so Bitcoin is something that I can send you money, but it's not really an exchange. So people try to do exchanges with this technology. There was Mastercoin and BitShares, I think. And all of those projects, people basically needed to take either write their own blockchain or take the Bitcoin code, fork it, changes the rules, etc., etc. And it was obviously a lot of work. And what Ethereum did is that it gave kind of programmable blockchain. So with Ethereum, you can easily kind of create your. So now, if you want to make a name system, you don't have to write your own blockchain. You can use Ethereum blockchain and program it to have kind of a name system based on it. And then what you want to use depends on what you want to do. If you want to create your own blockchain and you trust the Ethereum network, then you can just go and program it to use it. If you want to do something based on Bitcoin, you should go to Bitcoin. There are many differences between the two when you make a decision of what to use. But I have to say that in the last 2 years, I found myself more and more using Ethereum just because it's so easy to use and it has really a huge community.
Yeah, I see. So, Bitcoin and the previous blockchains were kind of like these pieces of code that were created to do one specific thing. And Ethereum in this context maybe would be more like a platform that you can use to program to your needs. So you can write an application and have that run on Ethereum instead of creating an entirely new blockchain for that.
Exactly.
And then, of course, that has a lot of advantages because you already have a large blockchain. So there are many participants, and it's harder to play against the rules. If there are more participants, it takes more computers to overwhelm a blockchain like that is based on consensus. If the blockchain is much larger, so it has a lot of advantages to have kind of this flexible approach. So before Ethereum, you would kind of fork Bitcoin or create a new blockchain for every application, and with Ethereum, you can just use Ethereum. And that's this smart contracts thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Smart contracts are basically programs that run that use Ethereum.
Okay. So are there other blockchains that do smart contracts?
Yeah, plenty. Okay. I mean, this is what always happens in the software world, right? Now someone comes up with an idea and then others copy it. So first, to be completely accurate, there's lots of problem that I say stuff which is super general and generalizing. And of course, if somebody afterwards go and check the nuances, they may disagree. So Bitcoin also have a programming language and you can use it, but it's much more difficult than Ethereum. So it was not meant for that. Building stuff on Bitcoin, which I did in the past, is so much more harder than it is on top of Ethereum. So, but you can also say that because Bitcoin has a programming language, you can also have smart contracts from Bitcoin, and some people do that. There are many other projects which kind of compete with Ethereum or rose afterwards. EOS, Tezos, those are two from 2-3 years ago. I'm not sure what's the current trend besides Ethereum, but probably there are like many, many more that I just don't follow.
Okay, so there's technical development, and then Ethereum kind of made the concept of using smart contracts popular, but of course there are many forks, and it's like kind of the first version that is not extremely experimental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is the smart contract feature of Ethereum actually used for productive purposes?
I think so. I think so. So Ethereum had waves of what people do with smart contracts. I think the first wave was 2017, or the end of 2016, beginning 2017, when people did the ICOs, which you can say whether it's productive or Ponzi schemes, but it is definitely something that people did. Afterwards, I think actually like 2018, 19, there was a waves of people doing stuff with DAOs, which we are going to talk about today. So this was the word of the year. 2019 was definitely the word of the year. And now there are lots of financial applications based on Ethereum. So all kind of loans and exchanges, stable coins. Stable coins means a coin that has the same value as some kind of fiat coin, like dollars. So right now there is really a lot of financial applications.
Fiat coin, you mean normal currency like you would use with your hand?
Right,
the fiat currency box, but that's basically a shorthand for normal money, dollars, euro, other currencies.
So lots of financial stuff based on Ethereum. And people use it, so it is productive. This is really, Ethereum is a very vibrant and interesting area, but I think that right now it's safe to say that almost all the applications which are popular are financial services and financial applications, just decentralized. So the new world of 2020 is DeFi, decentralized finance.
Okay, I see. And would that be something that would be like interesting for like a private person to get into, or is it like more something that is used by institutions and bigger organizations, or people who want to start bigger organizations in the Ethereum world, or would it be brought to like for me invest into Ethereum?
So you mean if any of the current popular Ethereum applications is interesting for a regular person to use? It's a good question. It's a good question.
Thank you.
Maybe even a bit difficult for me to reply because I'm not exactly the average user. I personally don't use any of the financial services of Ethereum. I mean, the only thing that I do with blockchain financially is basically payments. So for a long time, for many years, I get paid in cryptocurrencies already. And I also pay with that to stuff. Yeah, it's a nightmare to sort out with the tax office, but eventually they got used to me. I know lots of people. I know people who use the financial services, but they are all kind of maybe fringe people who are really against the system and look for alternatives and this kind of stuff. I also know people who work for international companies and they use it for payments because it's slightly easier. I would say that if you're the common person, let's say my parents, probably there is not much for them to look there right now. It's too complicated to be really used for financial services by the regular person. And the benefits are not completely clear.
Okay. So for you, it's your field of study, the thing you're interested in academically, but it's also like in some applications, like actually transference of money, it's also something you've been using yourself. So it's already starting to be something that can be used in the world. And did you ever use a smart contract yourself? Did you ever do a transaction with smart contracts, for instance?
Yeah. I mean, I do it now. I do it now all the time. So I even wrote a few smart contracts myself. If we take, I mean, so I wrote a few smart contracts where Ethereum just began just for playing, and I published them, but it's probably not worth speaking about the experiments. But I use now, so in the current project that I do, it's called the Almonit, and we are doing decentralized websites. And these decentralized websites, they are used on a decentralized name system. So the thing that we spoke before, and to register a name or to set up the field of the name, the thing that the name points to, this is all smart contracts applications. And I use those on a daily basis. And besides, we are also in the development of the project that we do. We are trying to make it operate with smart contracts. So I write those, use those in a test environment, not in the real environment. But that's what I've been doing since Corona began, more or less.
We should talk about this before the end of this thing, so you have a chance to plug it and kind of tell a bit about how the practical usage works, and if you run into any sort of problems and how it feels like to actually use these things. There are bound to be some interesting anecdotes there, I hope.
Yeah.
But before that, we should probably get on to DAOs. But before that, I have some questions about smart contracts themselves. Who runs the code in smart contracts?
It's slightly difficult to reply, but I'll try. The code of smart contracts is normally super easy. It's like a code that your calculator could probably run. It's not heavy calculations. So the problem there, it's not really who runs the code, but more. So Ethereum is a big database, and it has all kind of states. It changes all the time. So what you want to make sure is that the changes goes according to the smart contracts which are in Ethereum. So the changes are being done by the miners. And then to answer your question, you can say that the miners are the one who runs the smart contracts, because basically the miners take the input from all the Ethereum user each 14 seconds, I think, in the case of Ethereum, and they create a new state of the database by running all the smart contract code. But this code, since it's so easy to run, it's not so much interesting that they run it. It's more interesting that otherwise people like me can go and check, can redo their calculation, rerun the code myself on my computer, and see that the result is the same.
So would it be accurate to say that there's no particular computer really executing the code? Like there's not like this one server and that's executing the code, but that the code being executed and the changes to the blockchain, the new database entries that are created, that all is basically happening as an emergent effect of the blockchain, and not like it's not like you're running code on one single server.
Yeah, I would even go further and to be completely clear, we just not call it code. This is instructions. It is not a code that you need like a really server to run, because when you think of a code that you run on a server, you think of something hard, something that you need a server power.
It's a lot of code and a lot of
instructions. And here it's super simple instructions normally. A name server is basically a name server is something that I give money and they give me a name if the name is available. So it is really simple code. There is not too much to that. So the instructions the smart contracts are like instructions how to change the database. It's being run by the miners, not by one single miner, by all of them. They create a new version of the database, and then all the users can verify that the new versions actually follow the instructions, meaning it's actually follow the smart contract. I think that in this specific case, the word instructions maybe is clearer than code, but each one, whatever is very clearer from them, of course.
So it's not really JavaScript run or Python running on your server. It's more like a very short assembly language, and instructions are very, very expensive. So you just use very few sort of assembly instructions on the blockchain.
Right. The cost of those instructions is a huge problem of using Ethereum. At some point, I mean, like 2 or 3 months ago, we had to pay, I think, like almost $20 to register a name, which is a super simple short instruction. And we also have we got donations for the project, and we are rich. We got about, I think, $400 donations. The donations are in a multi-sig account, so you need 2 out of the whole members of the project to move them somewhere. And we wanted to move them to my account because I'm the one who actually pays for everything. And just this simple action of checking that the signatures are of 2 of the members of us and sending it to my account costed $28. So those instructions are really expensive, and this is one of the biggest challenges of blockchains, I think, especially of Ethereum nowadays.
I see. So it's kind of inefficient, and because it's inefficient, it's expensive to run computations from there.
Right, exactly.
It's not really an option to move your server to Ethereum, your web server to Ethereum, because it's just kind of expensive, and delivering one website would be very expensive.
Right, exactly.
So what happens when there's a bug in a smart contract?
It's a sensitive topic. Depends which kind.
Out into sweat.
Well, I mean, we don't have any bugs. No, I'm joking. We are lucky enough that by the time that we started developing, enough other people had bugs, so that now we know how to write it in order that if a bug happens, we don't suffer so much.
I always say the same thing to my boss. There are no bugs in my code until there are.
Yeah. So in the early days of Ethereum, a bug meant catastrophic results. I think there are 2 famous stories in Ethereum. The first one is in 2016, which is called the DAO hack. The DAO, again, we got this. The first Ethereum DAO was able to collect from people $150 million, and then it was hacked because of a bug. Somebody gained access to this money, and you can do a full podcast on this story and what was done to recover the money, and what are still the applications till nowadays. The second big bug, so there were million bugs in smart contracts, but the second one, which was famous, was of a company called Parity.
Mm-hmm.
Parity is not the name. I'm confusing. Parity is the product.
You can just Google something along the lines of Parity.
So yeah. So Parity is the product, and company name. Just I have a black moment. So they also did ICO. They collected money from people. I think they collected $200 million, and then someone, either not intentionally or with a lot of style, activated a bug in their code that froze all those $200 million.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who did it, which is she or he, so they opened with a lot of style issue in the GitHub repository of this company, and the issue was, I think I accidentally destroyed your smart contract. And as far as I know, the money is still frozen till nowadays.
Oh wow!
So this was the early versions. Nowadays, a smart contract before production goes for lots of auditing, which obviously does not eliminate all bugs, but at least it mitigates it. So still bugs are being found all the time. Also, I would say that nowadays smart contracts include kind of a red button or escape plan that at least if some members of some of the users or some amount of developers or whatever think that something is wrong or that there is a bug, they can exchange the code. They can update a new version. This is where things stand nowadays.
I see. So bugs in Ethereum expensive. So make sure your code is correct.
Yes, and make sure to also have some kind of backup plans for the case that your code is incorrect, because all codes are incorrect at some point.
So Ethereum isn't really something that you would hire like a normal development team to do, but you need a highly trained specialist with a good non-Ethereum insurance policy to handle things if it gets expensive.
Yes.
I see. So, I think at this point we've kind of explained what Ethereum and what blockchain is. And I think now there's finally the point where we can move on to the actual subject of our discussion today. DAOs. Can you repeat again, what are DAOs?
Decentralized autonomous organizations. Historically, the first DAO was actually called a DAC, Decentralized Autonomous Company. It was made, I think, in 2013, or 14, I don't remember the year, by, I think, Dan Larimer, who was back then doing Beaches, and he was writing, I remember, very enthusiastic blog posts about this idea and how what he does is actually like a decentralized autonomous company. Afterwards, the idea was kind of picked up by many people, went for a few versions, and the common name nowadays is DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization.
It was the next one.
It's the next one. Yeah. I'm not sure if probably an American will pronounce DAC differently. I pronounce it as DAC because, I'm not a native English speaker, so I'm allowed to do funny mistakes.
So DAC and not DAC. Yeah. This one would still have been nice. You can do phonetically. So
definitely.
It's basically the same, at least over telephony. What was the motivation for creating this first DAO? What kind of problem were they trying to solve?
I think it's both a problem and an observation. The observation was that there's a difference between one-time actions between people. Like if right now I sell you something, I don't know, my beautiful hat.
Very nice.
It's expensive hat, so I will send to you for no less than, I don't know, 1,000 euros. You seems like a person who would pay 1,000 euros for a hat. Then the whole process will take short amount of time. So the time it will take you to give me the money, that can be a second if you have 1,000 euros in cash, and the time it will give that I would need to give you the hat. So the trust that we will put it in each other will be very, very short-living. And this is exactly and what Bitcoin does is solving these issues in the internet. With Bitcoin, you can exchange stuff in the internet, which includes like a very short amount of, it solves the problem of actions which are very short. But organization is something in which if you and I do an organization, and let's say optimistically the organization lives for our lifetime, and this is a trust that we have in for a much longer period of time, right? And what Beachers were doing, and what actually many people do in this blockchain in this blockchain area, is that they kind of create organizations, because there are always a group of people who are working together towards a common goal. That's literally an organization, and they do it with minimal or almost no trust with each other. So I think the motivation to call something a DAC or a DAO was just an observation that those entities already exist. That what we do is actually an organization. It's not a P2P protocol anymore.
And how specifically is in terms of technology, how is such an organization different from just like a normal smart contract? So what makes a set of smart contracts, I presume, what makes the set of smart contracts a DAO and an organization? So how do you go from contract to organization?
Yes, it's another good question, because I think that it comes to the fact that what is an organization is something which is, so there are some human terms which are not always easy to define, like the difference between a battle and a war. Disease and a pandemic. I mean, you have some criteria for that, but sometimes you wouldn't know.
There's like a gray area between the definitions. So there's probably some organizations some DAOs that are more contract-like than other, and some smart contracts that are more DAO-like than most smart contracts, but still isn't a DAO yet. So there's kind of a fluid difference. There's like a fluid area between those two terms.
Yeah, so I would say that my distinguish will be based on the intention. I mean, if the people who do that, if the people who create the application using smart contracts intend to make an organization, I would call it an organization. I would call it a DAO because this is their intention. If they don't, then maybe they are accidentally a DAO, but which I think happens quite a lot in Ethereum, that people are accidentally DAOs, but no one need to impose any definitions on them. And some smart contracts are really obviously not an organization. It's just like tools or something which is operated by one person. A person is generally not an organization, etc., etc.
Obviously, like a name system maybe is more like a database and less like an organization. I mean, there may be an organization managing that name system.
Right. So
but the name system itself isn't like a club you can join.
Actually, yes. So a name system is, as you said, it can just work automatically without any, like it's a set of rules which are super simple. So it can be thought about not an organization. A name system can also be thought about as an organization, like ENS, which is the Ethereum name system. I think that they are technically a DAO because it's to do any change there. You have you need agreement of 7 people. So majority out of 7 people, which is a very simple, naive form of organization. Yeah. So what you said.
Great. And so what is kind of like the standard feature set a DAO would have? Like what if say, hey, Neiman, can you build me a DAO? What things would you build into the smart contract or set of smart contracts?
Yeah, so this is where the understanding of what is a DAO comes into action, because different people have different understandings. Like if you ask the Ethereum community, first thing right now, Ethereum community.
What community?
Ethereum.
Ethereum, sorry.
Yeah, Ethereum community right now thinks of a DAO as something which is based on Ethereum, and it's not true. I, for example, built a DAO which is based on Bitcoin. The Ethereum DAOs have a very specific set of characteristics. So if you ask an Ethereum person what is a DAO, they would say that a DAO, again, generalizing, that a DAO is a collaborative cooperative that manages money together. So kind of something like a way for people to manage their investment or money together. They would say that a DAO, the important thing of a DAO is that everyone makes the decisions together. But for Ethereum DAOs, this became like a main thing. If you go to other DAOs, they will tell you that that maybe it's not for money, but it's for managing voting of some kind of club. Maybe they would tell you that it's not that everyone has to do the votings together, but it's more that they have kind of a state system that some people elect once in a month, representatives do the actions, and then there are re-elections. So what is a DAO? In which case you need a DAO depends who you ask. Which part of the questions did not answer? Because I feel that there is something I didn't answer to.
I think that was a great answer. So what I personally heard from that what makes a DAO special is kind of that voting aspect. So you have a group of people, and instead of having just one person or like a fixed set of rules that decide what is allowed and what is not allowed, you kind of can vote. So you allow people to kind of dynamically change the rules of the game in a way because they can vote on something, and then what you basically put into a DAO is like not the bottle selling aspect of your hackerspace, but maybe in the DAO you would manage who can manage the money. Maybe you'd allow online voting to happen. Public online voting, private online voting doesn't really work, but if it's completely public, that can work. And you allow that to take place over the blockchain. So it's basically money plus making collective decisions that concern that money and maybe some technical resources.
Yes, exactly. Just maybe to focus it slightly more. What you described is also true for lots of traditional organizations, associations, vereins in Germany, right? And I don't think that those organizations needs a DAO really. So I don't think that a hackerspace needs a DAO, because a hackerspace is, again, everyone in the same country, in the same state. They will register organization in Germany. I think probably they may even be required by the law to do that. So I would say that a DAO comes in the case where the participants are internet citizens. Like if again you take what we have now, we are already like 7 people from 4 different countries. I have no idea how, if we would want to manage what we do with this organization, I have no idea how we would do that. We discuss it. We discuss it, and after a second, we start arguing which country we register, because each one was in their own country. It is very inconvenient for me to have a organization that I own, but it's registered in the US or in Turkey.
To set up in South America, and then you can't use the facilities because it's on the other end of the world.
Yeah, or there are some countries, I'm from Israel, there are some countries that we don't have relations with, so I cannot even, there are issues if I work with people in those countries in which country to register.
Yes.
Some of the people that I work with, I never met, I don't know their real name, but I trust them because we are internet friends for so long. So I develop with them trust as much as I do with some of my good friends from reality. So I think that this is the case that you really need a DAO. That when you want to make an organization from people who are not from your geographical area, or not from the same, not from the EU, there is no really other good solutions for that nowadays, I think.
So basically what I hear from that is this kind of an organization where you don't see each other on a regular basis, where you cannot meet in like some room, sit down and sort it all out, but where you're online and you want to do stuff together online, and maybe you're not entirely sure what precisely. So there's like not one thing, but maybe you want to start a blog or something and do that collectively, or you want to manage money together on Ethereum, and those are all things that you could do with a DAO. And then you could move some of the technical resources like the Ethereum money, or maybe a blog posting software or something that would allow you to give you tokens that you can publish something on a blog. Like some technical system you could come up with that would allow you to vote on that stuff in like a formal manner, in like a technical manner, and then decide on that together. And you would probably do that in an environment where maybe you kind of trust the people, but maybe not completely, and maybe you want to allow new people to join and give them some level of access without giving them complete access to like some server. And so what you do is create this online organization in the blockchain to manage these resources. So you can kind of do that collectively in an easy way.
Yes, exactly. Regarding to the last part that you said, what you create is kind of a programmable organization. Right? I mean, like, so a hackerspace is an organization which is not programmable. It's written in the legal terms. It is being enforced by the legal system.
And by the social rules in the group, which are often mostly not written down, but like exist between the people as like this emergent social construct.
So the social rules that exist between people and the emergent social contract, this would actually still exist in a DAO. So eventually, if the rules of the DAOs are against what the people want, then the people will just ignore them, or they will switch to a new DAOs. The DAO really does, in my feeling, the DAO really just replaces the legal structure. So it does not replace the social structure. It moves it to the internet, but it's still social structure, especially since Corona, all the social stuff happens in the internet. It replaces the legal structure with programmable structure. So now if you want to write basic rules of your organization. You don't go to a lawyer, you go to a developer, or you use some kind of framework or some kind of tools to do that. If you want to, all the legal stuff and all the actions and is done with code. That's how I see it. Like replace lawyers with cryptographers. I'm definitely generalizing in an extreme way here, but that's one way to look at it.
Not sure which one is better, to be honest.
Definitely.
I wanted to say something, but I forgot what. So that also is there like some way you can evolve the structure of your DAO? Is there a way that you can say, hey, this rule was created, this structure was created 20 years ago, and our social structure has kind of changed. Can you change the structure of the DAO to do something new, or is there kind of a lock-in effect where the social rules that were 20 or 50 or 100 years ago become locked in and can never be changed?
Yeah, generally yes, I would say yes. There are two extreme cases. So what we're a bit confused about is you can have really extreme cases where it cannot change. Like I can now start a DAO, which means I program the rules. I can write that the DAO has one rule, that whatever Neiman says happens. I can then give no ways to change this rule, and then the DAO is stuck. So that's one extreme case. But that's not what people do. With the time, emerges some kind of finger rules or methods to design a DAO. They are still kind of in their infantry, so they are not really, like if you now want to start your own DAO and you want a good set of rules to ensure that if things happen in the future, the social structure changes and the DAO also adjusts to it, the existing rules are still in experimental stage, so it's not really clear for you what you should choose. But this is definitely the intention of most people, I think, that make a DAO nowadays. They include rules to how to change the rules, in the same way that the state has a rules how to change the rules. It includes rules how to new members join. What is the wait in a voting of a new member, because maybe it takes some time until somebody gets an equal vote. It includes votes of how to remove members who misbehave or just disappear, because, etc., etc. So the goal of this whole DAO movement, in my point of view, is to have a good infrastructure for design programmable organizations that adjust with time very quickly to social changes. Because eventually, if you won't do that, and the community would just hate the rules of the DAO, the community would all leave the DAO, start another organization with their rules, and the first DAO would be deserted and hence basically meaningless.
But I mean, of course, when there are more and more, if the organization is big, that could be very tough. And I mean, we've seen rules in the last 20 years change. And like for instance, in Germany, one thing that happened just a few years ago was homosexual weddings were allowed before the law. And I mean, there's always these examples of kind of social progress. And to me, this sounds very much like if you use DAOs in a lot of places, that could actually prevent social change from happening and social progress from occurring, because the rules are kind of locked in. And then maybe there's enough popular votes to kind of change the social rules, but the laws of the DAO won't permit it. So is there a way? Does this sort of lock-in effect could that happen, and what could you do to mitigate that?
It's a good question. I think that you need to develop some kind of design paradigms for DAOs. It does not have it. And those design paradigms would have to be tested with time to see that it really doesn't happen. So, even when you and I sit now and make like a set of design rules for DAOs to make sure that no social lock-in would happen because of the DAO, because you don't want the DAO to dictate society what to do. You want the DAO to adjust to what people do. That's the whole idea of rules. If you're a nice person, but let's say that you and I are nice people. So if we sit down and then design such a rules that we are really satisfied with, then we would have to test them. Only time would say they are good or not. And that's why right now, if you start a DAO, you wouldn't know which set of rules to use really, because there is not enough. There hasn't been enough time to test what people did, all the experiments that people do, and it's also possible that just nobody still found out the right rules. Of course, you can go and study a lot from organizations all over the history. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that either organization should be so different than other organizations we had in the past. Uh-huh. But to be honest, what you mentioned, how to create an organization that does not lock in society, but allow society to change, is a challenge also without a doubt. It's just very difficult to do.
I mean, we do kind of have examples of both, where you kind of have like the examples of social progress through revolution, and that happened where the entire system was toppled. But then we also have examples like German, the German Grundgesetz actually is one example for that. There's like, it's interpreted today much different than it would have been interpreted 50 years ago. And the Constitution of Germany basically, this is basically the Constitution of Germany. It allows for this sort of change. So, I mean, you can develop systems that allow change within the system and don't lock it in. So maybe there's an option to do that in a DAO too. So you just have to make sure that no organization that tends to lock in becomes too big. But that's of course a challenge for social systems too.
So there are relatively new, there are kind of court systems that emerge for DAOs nowadays. There is one that Aragon do. They do a decentralized court. Aragon is a framework for DAOs. Right now, if you want to start a DAO and you don't know anything about development, you should probably use a framework. And there is Aragon, which is big, and there is DAO Stack, which is very big, and we use. So I like specifically. And Aragon DAOs sometimes have issues. Some of the rules are unclear, or there are disputes. And then they started, I think this year or the end of last year, to do a decentralized court for DAOs, in order to have the ability to advance the interpretation with time. So exactly the thing that the German court does. In a previous project that I was involved with, BISC, I had a similar proposal that the people there did not like that much, basically because they were afraid, quite justifiably, to make a alternative, parallel legal system to the real one, because you may have legal issues with it. But my bottom line is that you can have a similar solution for DAOs, saying that eventually the DAO makes its own decision, but if really a dispute occurs, you can go to a court, and just when you program the DAO, you need to program the DAO such that a court decision can enforce things on the organization.
That sounds
This sounds very complicated. Sorry.
I mean, it sounds like it would replicate social structures that we have in the real world too, and
yes,
and codify that, and because we have these exit clauses in normal social systems too. I mean, you of course have the rules that are specified in your Satzung, in your like constitution of your club, if you have a club in Germany. But then, of course, if you specify something that's not lawful, you have you have basically the law coming in and saying, hey, that's not okay. So, in fact, that already exists. We just don't tend to think about that so directly in the context of social structures, because you don't really have to write it down explicitly. Because if enough people just say, hey, we don't like it like that, then your Satzung can say anything it wants. But in the end, more people being of a different opinion will always beat what's written in the law. So,
yes.
And of course, that can happen in a DAO too, because you can just abandon it.
Yeah, I think in general, this whole DAO movement, or basically the whole blockchain movement, I don't want to insult anyone, but it's not innovative in the way that it's new ideas. What it does, the whole thing, what it does is basically take the old ideas and move them to modernity, to the internet.
I wouldn't say that the law is unmodern.
Sorry?
I wouldn't say that the law is unmodern.
Well, I mean, modernize them in the way that it moves them to the internet age.
Mm-hmm. Like to a technical system, let's say that. That's
fair enough, yeah.
Okay, so So basically, you now have a sort of organization that you can program.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm a programmer, so I know how programming usually goes. You need to be very, 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 very specific. You need to know exactly what is supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But now I also know that social systems kind of tend to be fluid and complex. So often you start a social system and you don't really need to know the details of how it will behave. Instead, there's like kind of an emergent behavior coming up just because when you put multiple people in a room, they'll do stuff. So
Right.
is there kind of a way to replicate that with DAOs, or do you have to like know everything from the start and write it down as code, and if there's a bug you've lost?
No, no, I think you can replicate it. So one of the nice things about the DAOs or about blockchain in general is how it looks at its participants. When we do what you described in reality, we look at people like human identity. When we are in the internet, we look at their internet identity, and when we are in blockchain, we kind of look at their digital signatures. So this is how we identify people by their, private keys. And you can really just make a DAO which has one rule, and the rule says, okay, this is the participants. Let's say, which is just a big list of public keys, and then whatever happens is what the majority or some part of the participants decide. So in this view, you can really replicate it by just, if you want, I don't have now time to really phrase it more accurately, but I'm pretty sure you can phrase a behavior which will say, if this is what the people with those public keys do, and by do I mean, they have to sign something, then this is what the DAO will do. So then you don't really program what the DAO will do. You just tell the DAO what will happen is what the emergent behavior of participants of the DAO will do.
So basically, you could just say, these people vote on everything, like with some simple system, or like you can define the voting rules, and then they can just vote it out, and then if enough people just say, yeah, that's fine, then that's how the rule is created, how the DAO behaves, because its members just say, hey, we want that, so it will be.
Right, but even this does not completely describe what you would like, because I think that what you describe is something like there is a big group of people, and now many of those people open a blog. So if those people all manage money, and many of them just by social interaction decided to open a blog, it was not an official decision, then you will maybe find out that some money goes from the organization to this blog. So this is kind of emergent behavior, right? I was giving a confusing example. Let me try to rephrase it. Let's say you put many people in.
Subject.
Let me try to maybe phrase it simpler. Let's say you put 100 people in a room. You tell them the organization, but you don't tell them what the organization does. Now they sit there, they interact, they decide what to do without any formal framework, and eventually you find out that 30 of them or 70 of them, or some, let's say 70 of them open the blog. So then, though it was not formally structured, when somebody would ask, what does this organization do? The reply would be, they open blogs. Or this is an organization for blogs, or something like that.
But can the people just do that without an organization even existing?
Yeah. No, it's a bad example. Let me rethink it for the next time we talk.
I think then there should be a next time we talk, and next time we can get into that specific example. But I mean, I think we've heard a lot about the specific things DAOs can do, and there were a lot of examples. I mean, even that just there's people who can vote in it, and you can do a majority vote, and by default nobody votes. So even then you can have emergent things happening, because like if you don't veto it, that's going to happen. And then of course that already allows some measure of stuff is going to happen without it having been written down. So I think there's a clear path of how you could do that. You just don't have to have a bug in your software. Then you have lost, but unless that happens, you can. It sounded to me like you can have an organization that is not like completely codified.
Right. I can also, I think if I can describe what we do in Almonid as an example of a DAO that we are doing right now. We have a project, it's called Alpress. Almonid is the name of our project. Almonid is a Hebrew word for anonymous.
So let's get into your organization a bit later. I think we should definitely get into that. But before that, I want to ask, when we've talked today, you've asked me, so are we going to talk about DAOs or about decentralized organizations in general? And I asked, is there a difference? Is there a difference?
I asked if we are going to speak about DAOs or self-governing platforms.
Self-governing, sorry.
Right.
I already forgot.
That's all right. That's all right. So DAO is a very well-known within the blockchain community term. A self-governing town is I think something that we came up with. Self-governing platforms is something that we came up with. And that's the thing that we have been doing in the last few months, trying to create a self-governing platform. So a self-governing platform is basically means internet platform which is being managed by the users. Because as we know, all the internet platforms nowadays are being managed by a big corporation.
I've run some myself, but nobody uses
Right, and that's what I want to say. All they are self-hosted. So so the users are the one who actually hosted themselves, but that's usually a bit smaller. Ignoring the self-hosted movement, which is so difficult to do, requires resources. And most of the platforms are centralized. They are being managed by companies who, by definition, care about the revenue and not about the users, which is okay. I mean, I have nothing against capitalism. I mean, that's how the world works, but it becomes an issue when those platforms, when digital life becomes real life. This is really what happens this year. Then it becomes an issue because suddenly we start to have discussion if Twitter is allowed or not allowed to filter Trump. And people speak about it like Twitter is some kind of government, But it's not. Twitter is a private company, and basically I think that they are allowed whatever the laws allow, and the law allows that, and they will do what they think, not based on what the users want, but what they think is best for them. Based on what they think is best for them.
There are private companies that are going to do things which I'm probably not going to like a lot.
Right. So the main idea of self-governing platforms is to have internet platforms which are governed by their own participants. In the most science fiction vision, it would be Twitter, which is being governed by Twitter users. So then the question is
kind of a decentralized Twitter, where there's not like central platforms, where there's no distinction between servers and users, basically.
Right. I would even go and call it just democratic Twitter. I mean, because the decentralization here is like a tool to implement it, maybe, or maybe not. But the main thing is that this brings this democracy to those platforms. And we don't have now democracy in those platforms, and we like or we want democracy. So this is the main idea of the self-governing platforms, to create more and more platforms. There are many issues with that, which are a long time to discuss. For example, how do you decide who makes a decision? So do you have to be a Twitter user for a year, which is very active, and only then you get a vote, or maybe anybody who joined an hour ago can make a vote? How do you prevent?
Could you say every person can get a vote? Like you cannot create a bot, but like every person can vote on stuff.
But the question is, I mean, so a person who does not use Twitter maybe shouldn't vote, right? I mean, you can say that a person who does not use Twitter shouldn't vote.
No, I mean, as opposed to like no company should vote on what happens on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean,
but like natural persons, maybe people who've been a bit active and are actually reading stuff they can vote and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So there are those kind of designing and philosophical decision, but then there is also the decision just how the hell to do such a thing, because to self-host.
And how do you do it without needing the energy output of the sun?
Right, that's a different question.
Decentralized Twitter without becoming a Kardashev to civilization.
Right. So we have two questions. One is how to do it at all, and then how to do it efficiently.
Technical terms, yes.
Yeah. So we have two technical questions. So the questions for the first one, the suggestion that we have in Alpress in the project which we are doing is to use a DAO.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to go into the design of this DAO because it's quite complex and we don't have time for that. But that's basically the tool that we use.
Is there a paper that we can link?
Not ready yet. Not. I mean, it's all in so it's all in a draft stage.
Are you going to write it?
I mean, me and a few other people, so I don't write it.
So I'm going to retweet it at some point.
Okay,
and
thank you.
going to Twitter the paper too.
Thanks.
Is there a draft that people can read and like go over and check if it checks out?
It has to be cleaned a bit before we link it.
Yeah.
So there is a draft for the self-governing platforms that I sent you. I think this can already is a readable state, though it is needs much more editing and rewriting. But for the specific how the Alpress technically works, there is still a lot of work to do in this document. The second question that you asked, how to do it without killing energy, is a general blockchain question. How to do green blockchains. Just to sum things up very quickly, there are, I think, two main proposals how to do green blockchains and as a product also green DAOs, which are common, and one which is less common. The common one is proof of stake, which has been a huge challenge. There are blockchain like Cardano, who is based on proof of stake, and they are based on a lot of cryptography.
Okay. So I think we have to go into proof of stake and then of course by extension proof of work too. So let me try proof of work and you can tell me whether I'm full of nice stuff. And then you can explain proof of stake because I've never heard about that. So proof of work is basically you just check if a computer had to do some work to get to a result. It's based on cryptographic hash functions. Basically, you select the hash function. And then the result of a hash function, and that's hard to find. So you try random inputs to the hash function until you find a hash that generates this output. And then because that's hard to find, you've had to, on average, do this many calculations. There are multiple ways of doing that. There's like math behind that, and you can use different algebraic structures to do that sort of thing, and it's an interesting research topic, but basically you have to invest CPU time to get to a solution, and this is why Bitcoin is actually so bad for the environment, because it's all based on do some work, and that work isn't really useful for anything, so you're just basically taking the energy output of Austria and dumping it all into like proving that you've done work because that's how the technology works. So in a nutshell, I think that's it. So and basically you want to get away from that because it's just burning energy basically. And then so you're saying from the resource that should be proven you have invested, it should no longer be work, CPU time. It should be stake. So what does stake in this context mean?
Okay, so proof of work basically proves that you used that you have some resource, that this resource was used for a while. So this is proof of work, and because the amount of this resource is limited, and you have to use a lot of it to create a block, then it will be very difficult to create two separate blocks in the same time.
Yes, and the problem really is that Bitcoin is very expensive. So Bitcoin is worth a lot of money, So getting a Bitcoin is worth a lot of energy. And so
Right.
the system adjusts to just how much idiot people are willing to pay for a Bitcoin, and because they're willing to pay a lot of energy for that. And the output of atomic power plants and coal-fired power plants, that's why Bitcoin is so expensive. It wouldn't have to be so expensive if people didn't decide, hey, it's worth so much, I can just dump loads and loads of energy into my Bitcoin system.
Right. But again, the problem with Bitcoin is so expensive is because the kind of resource that you prove using is something which is really bad for environment. You prove that you use your, calculation power, which means that now for 10 minutes you used all of your computers, and this is bad for the environment. So one of the
design like a proof of work system that, for instance, required lots of memory, lots of RAM.
Right. So lots of storage. So this is one alternative, which I like a lot. There are a few projects that do that. Chia of Bram Cohen, the inventor of BitTorrent, is one of them, and they are doing a fantastic job. They are it's not ready yet, but that's what we are doing. There is Space Mesh, which is another project which is based on cryptography. They are using this exact same idea. So instead of proving using your computational power, you use your storage. And the nice thing that storage is something that, you take lots of hard drive, you fill them once, and you let them stay, and you don't, by keeping them and not changing anything, you don't use any energy. So that's the nice thing about it.
Well, but you use a lot of metal.
Use a lot of metal, but you use it once when you create the hard drive. Not every. It's much greener than using all the time your processors.
I believe you, but I think that the people would find a way to make it very non-green. But I mean, these are technical concepts, and they're just interesting to study from a technical point of view. So without deciding whether they're immediately applicable to the real world, you want to study this stuff just so you understand what can be done, and you can make the progress to an even better, more green system. So studying that sort of stuff is important.
I mean, you're absolutely right. So we don't know actually what would happen if people will start to use those things. Maybe they'll basically burn their hard drive every 2 days, or they will buy so much that it will be destroying it. We don't know. Yeah. So I'm kind of repeating the goal, not stating the result. Yeah. But this is one idea. So there are a few companies doing that. The Filecoin is the latest one who tries to do that. They are the first one who actually launched the product right now, but I'm not super convinced that they really do what they declare of doing, to be honest. So that's one solution, to replace work with storage. And another solution is to kind of replace work with stake. Stake means with money. So proof of stake means I have 1,000 Bitcoin. Now I lock this 1,000 Bitcoin that I cannot use them for a year. Here is a proof that so because Bitcoin is a resource, money is a resource, but it's a resource that actually by holding it you don't use any energy. So you can replace this computation or storage with a virtual resource, which is money. And proof of stake says the thing that you use to create a blog is just locking your money, and then you will not use any energy. The problem is that there is also no good really algorithm or protocol to do it in a super secure way, as far as I know. But that's the idea.
I mean, conceptually, that sounds really, really clever, because, I mean, one thing that, as far as I understood, Bitcoin is basically doing, if there's lots and lots and lots of people mining Bitcoin, it kind of adjusts the difficulty, because they don't really want all Bitcoins mined at once, so it becomes more difficult the more people try to get Bitcoins. And they're investing power until it's more expensive to invest more power. So, but then, of course, if you have to invest Bitcoin, you have to spend more and more Bitcoins to generate more Bitcoins. So if that investment is kind of exponential. So you want more Bitcoin, so you have to invest more and more and more and more and more and more and more Bitcoin. There's just some point at which this naturally won't make any sense anymore, because you just need to invest all your Bitcoins to invest Bitcoins. So, of course, if Bitcoins aren't worth anything, that doesn't help much. It's very cheap to get Bitcoins if they're not worth anything. But if they're worth a lot, then there will be kind of an optimum point. Like there's like you can optimize and you can invest more Bitcoin in the proof of stake and generate more Bitcoins with that. But at some points you also want to use them. So you can probably like write a math paper at some point if you found a way to make that work, to find just what that optimum utility is, and then that will just be it. So you kind of may also be generating like some sort of fixed point how much stake you'll have to invest in a certain environment. So that sounds pretty ingenious if that could work.
Yeah, there is a series of articles about it by Cardano team, cryptographic articles. There is a lot of work done by Ethereum about it. All of this is worth reading. There is right now, I think, a blockchain called Avalanche. I'm not sure if it's launched yet. I'm not sure if it's fair to classify it as proof of stake, but it's also definitely stuff to read. Again, as far as I know, all of them have problem with that, with the implementation, with the algorithms that makes it not perfectly secure, but it's all worth reading and also judge for each one should judge for himself, is it safe or not.
I think that sounds super interesting, but I don't think I think we've been talking for over an hour, so
it's becoming too long.
But no, it's all right. Maybe that's like a perfect topic to talk about next time, to see what kind of systems like that there are. I'd almost have asked you to just dump all the papers down below so we can just link them, but it actually sounds more interesting to just talk about that and kind of after that. So it sounds really clever. So I'm almost getting excited about that. But I think we were talking about autonomous organizations. I already forgot. So let's circle back to that for a minute.
So I think you asked how to make the blockchain, the DAOs, more green, less wasteful. And the answer is that right now there is no great way, but there are people working on it, and hopefully at some point a good way. Yeah, I hope at some point something. Yeah, I thought you asked it. Sorry.
It's all right. It's a fantastic subject. I mean, that's really the core problem of Bitcoin. So if that can be solved, then it may actually be an interesting system. So that's really awesome.
So hopefully, as I said, it needs to wait to see what comes out of it. But right now, for what we do, we use Ethereum, which is a classic waste of energy blockchain. So because we don't have any better solution right now.
So let's talk about Almanit.
I'll give a sales speech. I'm not very good at it. Almanit is an open source project that began like a year and a half ago. Jeez, I'm old. A year and a half ago in real time, not in Corona time. So it began a year and a half ago. 10 years, yeah. By me, and so like one day, I have a good friend in Warsaw. He used to work for some blockchain projects like Golem and Omisago, which are well-known projects. And he came to me one day and he showed me a decentralized website that he did. Basically, he bought he used a decentralized name system based on Ethereum. It's called ENS. And he made a website based on something called IPFS. IPFS is a modern version new version of BitTorrent. So like something like BitTorrent. And basically, he went to his browser, he typed the name that he bought, and he went to his website, which means he really had a website that he was, accessible from everywhere, impossible to censor. He didn't have to pay for it anything for storage. And this was a dream of mine for many years. I was always looking at such decentralized websites. Maybe you remember there was a project in 2015, ZeroNet. They did similar things, but without names, and also it had other issues, but it was a great project in general, and I really loved it. So then I got really into it, and we wrote an extension to be able to actually access those websites a bit easier, because it was difficult to access. And then we started to speak with people, and people started to create more websites. So we built a search engine for such websites. And at this point, we also gave a name for the whole thing. We called it, so our organization that handles those decentralized websites, we call it Almonit. Almonit means anonymous in Hebrew.
Nice.
That's why we took it. And then this thing that began as a after work time project, I don't know. I mean, we each of us brought friends, or people just joined through the internet. We have the guy now, one of our members is the guy who was the first Twitter follower of the project and stuff like it. And the beginning of this year, we decided to make it a bit more serious. And in the beginning of Corona, we really started to make it serious.
Makes sense.
So now we are in the stage of doing that. And the way of us for making it serious is we have the small projects that we did as after work hobbies, which is the browser extension and the centralized search engine. And both of them work great. And we have like a small but loyal community of users. And what we try to do now is to build kind of using those techniques of decentralized websites and build a self-governing platform for publications. So stuff that people could write articles and blogs, papers, whatever, and have kind of assurance that it will not be blocked or deleted because of some because Facebook doesn't like it. You will get the assurance that it's not Google or Facebook blocking your content because of commercial reasons. If your content gets blocked, it's because the community decide to block it. So if you decide to...
So summing that up, the problem you're solving is not like having decentralized websites.
No, it's the governance of the
That's
of
what
content.
you've been saying governance all the time. No, I don't understand what you mean with governance.
Sorry, I'm not able to explain it,
No, it's perfect. I just finally got that. I wasn't very good at listening. I mean, that stuff is complex stuff. So that is awesome. And that is like a fantastic vision because you can like have an ethical document.
Exactly. That's the idea,
Ethical document. You can have the non-censorship approaches of like, you can have a technical system that prevents censorship from like some dark organization like the NSA, but that still provides governance that makes sure actually people are acting ethical, based on the assumption that many people are acting ethical. And I mean, putting that into context, there's like right now, just again, there was in the EU like this. They're trying to make a law that basically bans end-to-end crypto, and of course that is horrible because I mean that they're saying it's there to counter the. It's there to counter the all the criminal activity online, which would be nice if we could counter that. But of course, they're having much broader effects there. They're enabling surveillance. They're strengthening anti-democratic governments, and they're strengthening and they're even strengthening criminal organizations because now just criminal organizations are going to be the ones using end-to-end crypto. A system like yours would be much more efficient because you could just ban content because enough people just say, nope, that's not the sort of thing we want here.
Right.
And do that. Just do that openly. You have that deletion thing, and then nobody would have to run darknet services really anymore because they can just run on that because it's not possible to censor them.
Right. So it makes content invisible based on the ethics of the community. Yeah.
Yes. So that is really that sounds like a very democratic idea, and like something like one of those real sort of future technologies where we could go like using technology to strengthen democracy instead of weakening it and strengthening ethics at the same time. So.
So you summed up exactly what we are trying to do. So in the beginning, so I'm not promoting. It was not a promotion for any of the best stuff in the internet. It was mentioning that this stuff exists when you don't have governance, and our way to solve it is let the community decide its own moral and ethical standards and enforce it, hoping that it would have good ones.
And then, of course, you could use democratic institutions. You could create. You could. I mean, basically, if we circle that back to the chat we had about DAOs before, sort of the meta DAOs, we could create big DAOs and reproduce these legal concepts. You could have a DAO judge, which just say, hey, this content is banned. This should be deleted. And then you have a judicial process, and it doesn't have to be secret. You can just use a judicial process. It's kind of a legal blockchain that you can actually use. Yeah, bringing the legal aspects into blockchain.
Yes, I mean, so literally this is our goal and vision. We are not there yet, but this is literally the goal and vision. The first step for us would be that the community would be able to anoint some members as moderators. Mm-hmm. And then if the moderators do something that against the will of the community can reverse it. But yeah, but the end goal is what you said.
That's kind of the vision. And I mean, you're developing the technology to actually go into that direction and develop technology so at some point you can actually implement a more comprehensive system. Yeah. Of course, it's not there yet, but I mean, there needs to be research to get to that point.
Research, and I think lots of trial and error experiments to know how to design it properly. Mm-hmm. So we are trying to set up solid foundations. Which is already a challenging step. Yeah. If anybody watches that and they want to by the way, join and talk about it, we have both Riot, so Matrix group and a Telegram group, and you can find them both in our Twitter account, and we also, partly that's our Twitter, but it's the best way to start right now, talking to us.
It's a bit centralized, isn't it? Do you have a chaos.social or other Mastodon account?
No, but just because. So the thing that happens in such a project is that basically you do what people in the project do. This is what we got. So we got me, who is really into Matrix, so we have all the Matrix activity there, and we got another person who is in love with Telegram, so we got a Telegram channel. Would be happy if somebody, people help us to set up any other thing. Would be awesome.
So, what sort of help do you need? How can people get involved besides just going into the chat? What sort of help do you need? And what sort of help could you need from institutions?
So from institutions, okay, so basically when
funding.
Funding. We are super poor but sexy. So when it comes to
Berlin.
Sorry?
Works for Berlin.
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to work-wise, we need first we need lots of people who like to think about those things and write documents and edit documents and because all those documents are kind of emerging out of conversations and discussions. We need people who wants to play with or who likes to build websites and don't mind to build a primitive website under the limitation of this technology, because to do something impressive there is much more work than to do a classical website, but it's possible. We need graphic designers, or even one would help, because right now we do it, and we do have some people with a fairly good aesthetical skills, which are not me, but I mean, it's really bad. And anyone who likes to do stuff with communities, opening the, as I said, Chaos Social thingy or Mastodon, but we didn't have time. And also, because right now it's an open organization, I hope it will stay like this. Anyone who comes with an initiative is great. When it comes to developers, anyone who does kind of web development, so I guess JavaScript, React. Also, we do some things with Rust. So this would also be helpful. Super simple so far because I wrote the Rust.
Rust developers, look, you're working with the most advanced and coolest language, and you can also work with the coolest technical projects. So go for that.
Yeah, because right now I wrote some simple Rust server for us for some stuff that we need, but I studied Rust especially for that, so it's obviously primitive.
Okay. So, I think we need to talk again. This was great.
Yeah, it was
There was a
very.
lot of interesting stuff. But I mean, to kind of give a conclusion there, I think what I've really heard was that there's Bitcoin is a fantastic, interesting technology for doing research, and there's like a lot of potential in there. What I'm also kind of hearing is that the way we're using Bitcoin right now, it's unsustainable, and it's kind of before its time. So there's a lot of experimental technology, and then people are starting to hype it and act like it's a technology that is ready to be used, and it really is not. It sounds like right now it's not ready, but it sounds like there is great seeds to go somewhere in like 40 or 50 years that we can like really have a solid foundation there. We just wait the time and actually do the science and do the maths to find out how that really can be used. So I think that's quite cool. And I mean, I was really happy to hear that there are actual approaches to kind of create a green blockchain that doesn't have these big problems in terms of energy usage. So I've done lots of talking to about blockchain to salespeople, and that's always been a disaster. Who'd have thought? If you talk to a mathematician about blockchain, it becomes awesome all of a sudden. So that was really fun.
Yeah. I think part of the problem of blockchain or Bitcoin, maybe blockchain in general, but it's about money. It has money involved, and it already sometimes makes people think not objectively about it, and also sometimes makes you, when you speak to people, to see the ugly sides of it. So bringing money to something is not always a good thing to make it interesting.
Capitalism, not even once.
Yeah.
There was a technical mishap at the start. So at the start there won't be video. So can you just quickly smile at the camera so I can have a nice icon that I can cut out and that people can see at the start when there's no functioning video?
Sure. Hi. I'm smiling.
So now we've collected that. Whichever platform this will be posted on, there will be like links and maybe some sources if you have sort of links or papers you would like to share. We can just
sure.
If there's a down in the comments, we can put it down in the comments. And if you have questions, I'm sure you more than I will be available to answer questions.
Yeah, gladly.
If there are some. So, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting and suggesting it. It was a great idea.
Great. Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Gladly.
Goodbye.
Bye.
You don't need to disconnect. We just officially stopped.
Okay.
So
I have to go to the toilets actually, if it's okay for a second.